Okay, let's start with a question. What happens when two kids in a totally normal suburban garage invent their own god?
And not just invent a god, but use that god to declare like a total war on the idea of musical genre itself.
Right, and they treat a cheap little 4-track cassette recorder like it's some kind of holy relic.
You get Ween. That's what you get. You get one of the weirdest and I think one of those most important counterculture things to come out of America in the 80s and 90s.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we are going all the way into the source material on Aaron Freeman and Mickey Melchiondo, better known as Gene, and Dean Ween. Our mission here is to unpack the bizarre myth they built. It's this weird mix of the really vulgar and the truly sublime.
You have to start with the thing holding it all together. You have to start with Boognish.
Yes.
The sources are so clear on this. He is not a logo.
Yeah.
He is not some funny mascot.
He's their fictional god. A god of what? Laughter and madness?
Exactly. And the whole idea is that inside his grinning face, you find little pieces of every single kind of music that's ever existed.
And that belief that structure is everything. I think I read a quote from Dean Ween. It was an old interview where he just said, Boognish isn't a joke.
He's everything we do.
He's everything we do. Yeah. And that just tells you everything. They weren't trying to make things simple for you. They were intentionally chasing this kind of musical information overload.
Absolutely. And for you listening, that's how we structured this deep dive. We have to start where they started, in that Pennsylvania suburb, to really get how that lo-fi sound wasn't an accident.
It was a philosophy.
It was a choice. And from there, we'll follow their journey from like cassette worshipers all the way to becoming these studio wizards who could create, entire psychedelic worlds.
So this origin story, it's really about the dynamic between them, isn't it? Gene and Dean, they're not brothers, not by blood.
No, but musically, the sources all call them twins, like two sides of the same coin.
Gene, Aaron Freeman, he was the chaos, the raw emotion.
He was the feeling. While Dean, Mickey Melchiondo, he was the craftsman. He provided the structure and the technique. And that tension between them, that's the magic. That's Ween.
And all this is happening in a garage, in a quiet residential neighborhood.
Right. They don't have a big studio. They have cheap mics and that crucial 4-track recorder. And that setup, that wasn't a problem for them. It was the blessing of Boognish.
You can hear it so clearly on their early stuff, like on the pod from 91. This is what the sources call their lo-fi alchemy.
It's alchemy. Because it wasn't about not being able to afford better gear. It was about a sound. Gene Ween said it himself back in 92. He said he wanted their music to sound like a basement at 3 a.m.
I love that. A basement at 3 a.m.
And that's so specific, A cheap 4-track, it naturally distorts and compresses sound when you layer things. It adds noise. They didn't try to clean that up.
No, they left it in. That was the truth of the recording.
That's the dirty beauty. That's the term the sources use. And it's perfect.
It is perfect. Dirty beauty. It's unsettling. It's kind of psychedelic and sick, but it's not random noise. It's a very deliberate kind of chaos. It's weirdly addictive to listen to.
They knew exactly what they were doing. And that sound, that raw energy, it found a home pretty quickly.
Yeah.
You had indie labels like Homestead and Shimmy Disc picking them up.
Experimental labels.
Right. And so their music starts spreading through these, underground channels. And from the very beginning, Ween is placed in this perfect little spot somewhere between a practical joke and experimental music. The ambiguity was there from day one.
But at some point, that garage, that 4-track cave, as one source calls it, it just gets too small for their ideas.
It had to. And that's the big leap you see in the mid-90s. They take everything they learned from those limitations and they walk into a professional studio.
And that brings us to 1994 and the album Chocolate and Chews.
Their first real studio masterpiece. And this is where that war on genre just goes nuclear.
It really does.
Yeah.
I mean, you've got pop, funk, real country sounds, prog rock, soul.
Sometimes in the same song.
Or one right after the other. I think Dean's quote about it was perfect. He said something like, genre doesn't matter, we just shove all the music we like into it.
And that's where you really see that paradox we talked about, the vulgar and the sublime. You'll get the super tight, sophisticated funk of Voodoo Lady.
Which is a genuinely great funk track.
It's an amazing track. And then right after, you might get something just completely bizarre and unsettling. It's full of these intentional contradictions.
The music is often described as laughable yet heartbreaking. And I think that's it. They exist right at that point where high art and, low culture just collide.
And that's the period that gave them their their bizarre MTV moment.
Ah, yes. Push the little daisies.
I mean, can you imagine seeing that on MTV in the 90s? People were just totally confused.
Completely. The vocals are weird. It sounds cheap. It's frantic. Is this a joke? Is it a novelty song?
Or is this some kind of hidden genius?
And the answer, according to all the sources, is that it's both. The confusion was the entire point. They broke the frame. That's when everyone knew their whole deal was just laughing at boundaries.
Each leads them to their, I think, their most ambitious genre experiment yet. After mastering pop and funk, they decide to tackle country music.
In 1996, they released 12 golden country greats.
And on the surface, you think, okay, this has to be a parody, a joke album.
Of course. I mean, the sources even call it fake country, but there's one detail that changes everything.
The Nashville session musicians.
The real Nashville session musicians. They went to Nashville and hired the legendary players, the guys who played on the classic records you know and love.
And that's because this wasn't about making fun of country music.
Yeah.
They genuinely loved it. Dean was really clear about that. He said they loved it too much to disrespect it.
So what you get is this album that just dances between love and sarcasm.
Yeah.
It has this real warmth to it. You're laughing at it, but you're also completely in awe of the musicianship.
It's the ultimate homage, just passed through the completely weird Ween filter.
So, okay, they've mastered country by going straight to the source. The next project, though, it takes them somewhere completely different, somewhere infinite.
The Ocean. 1997's The Mollusk.
Which is so often called their absolute peak, their masterpiece.
And it is. It's a whole universe. The album is all about maritime mythology. It's this beautiful, kind of scary underwater world. It's a psychedelic pop monument.
Home of the classic Ocean Man, of course.
Of course. And the sound of that album is incredible. The sources describe it as this combination of Brian Wilson from the Beach Boys, that romance and complexity.
With Captain Beefheart's structured madness.
Exactly. It's beautiful and weird all at once. And technically, this is where you see how far they've come. The 4-track is long gone. For The Mollusk, they used a 16-track analog tape machine.
And that gives them so much more control, right? How does that actually change the sound for you, the listener?
It means they could be surgical. They could control what the sources called the fluctuation of noise. They were creating simulated underwater acoustics. Using very specific guitar reverb, vocal harmonies, sea sound effects, the 16-track gave them the clarity to build that world and make it feel real, not like a gimmick.
And Gene Ween even connected it to the theme, didn't he? He said, "The sea is infinite. Our music should be too." It was always about this boundless exploration.
But that infinite energy in a live setting, it often just turned into complete chaos.
Oh, absolutely. Their live shows were legendary for being unpredictable. You listen to something like Live in Toronto in 1996, and the set list is just, it's a suggestion at best.
They'd abandon songs halfway through. It was less of a concert and more of a ritual where the line between the band and the audience just completely dissolves.
Dean Ween had that great line about it. Every show is an accident waiting to be beautiful.
But you can't maintain that level of chaos forever. The sources also talk about the cost of that. The exhaustion, the substance abuse, the internal struggles. It's a hard way to live.
Which all came to a head around 2008. That's when Gene Ween stepped away to focus on his recovery from alcoholism, and the band went on hiatus.
It was a necessary break. Though Dean did keep the spirit alive with his own band, the Dean Ween Group.
But before they split, they gave us 2 more really interesting studio albums that hinted at a kind of maturity.
Yeah, a strange kind of maturity for them. Quebec from 2003 is much more introspective. It's still psychedelic, but it has these moments of quietness and solitude. It showed they could do more than just the loud, chaotic stuff.
And their last one before the break, 2007's La Cucaracha.
The Cockroach.
The title says it all, doesn't it?
It's about being indestructible.
Yeah.
That album sort of condensed everything they were about, the irony, the beauty, into one final statement before they quietly got back together years later.
And now their legacy is so interesting because you have this whole new generation discovering them. You have the people who grew up with them, but then you have kids finding Push the Little Daisies on YouTube and having that same, what is this, moment from 30 years ago.
The influence just keeps renewing itself. So when we try to synthesize all this, when we try to figure out what Ween is, you can't just call them a crazy band.
No, it's so much deeper. They're this bizarre, hilarious, incredibly detailed record of 2 people who took the cheapest tools you could find and, with just pure imagination, turned musical cliches and garbage sounds into a real, lasting mythology.
They prove that genres that should never touch, like country and prog rock, or funk and sea shanties, could actually live together in this one weird, affectionate universe they built.
The thing they actually produced, their real product, wasn't an album or a genre, it was a belief. An infinitely expanding belief, as one source puts it, that any music, any sound is worthy of love.
And it's all equal. Jazz, rock, techno, a kid song. It's all the same in the eyes of Boognish.
Which brings us right back to the beginning. Boognish is that impulse to laugh at the rules. That laughter is what keeps music free, even if the sound is distorted and the rhythm is broken. It's all about getting back to the real reason for music, to have fun.
Uncompromising, anarchic fun.
So we'll leave you with this to think about. If Ween proved that genre is irrelevant, that all sounds are equal under their weird smiling god, what kind of chaotic god might you invent to symbolize the strange, contradictory mix of music that you love?
Something to think about.
Thanks for diving deep with us. We'll see you next time.